Hi Gladstone and Central Queensland. My name is Zaik and I'm posting this video today to ask if you might consider joining me in an effort to protest against disinformation and covert vilification of minority communities in Australia. At 5 p.m. on July 11th, 2026, I will be standing outside the Harvey Road Tavern here in Gladstone to denounce both the venue owner's decision to host a performer who consistently aligns with dangerous ideologies, including Islamophobia, transphobia, racism in general, body shaming, misogyny, and a few other problems. The individual himself as well, who is Isaac Butterfield. You may or may not know, but Isaac is a comedian who has been around for a few years. And I have had the misfortune of Facebook's algorithm exposing me to his very painful content for the last several months. Isaac labels his content as comedy. However, when you check his platforms, 90% of his videos are serious and highly political, often saturated with inaccuracies, unkind intentions, and a distinct fervour for profiting off hatred. The influencer himself even reacted to my online petitions for support, and fair enough. He did so publicly in one of his videos, in what I deduced was a message of intimidation, because he did name me and his supporters did attempt to harass me online. But what I want to make clear to you all is that on the 11th of July, I am not protesting free speech or a man because he's white. I'm white. I'm Caucasian too. My issue isn't white people, as his supporters insinuate. I am instead opposing the immunities given to modern day racists, sexism, and the epidemic of fake news being utilized by those who monopolize and profit from unhinging societal harmony. To be clear, the reason I am protesting Harvey Road is that this is the second time the owners are hosting a transphobic performer or performance within the span of a year. And in locations like Gladstone, people are afraid to stand up and defend our rights, especially such a tiny community like transgender people. The immigrant population in Gladstone is so minimal that if something like a venue hosts racists or other problematic individuals or groups, no one is really able to stand up and defend themselves. I wouldn't blame Harvey Road for having the inclination to host dangerous ideologues, because in a location like Gladstone, somewhere that is regional, somewhat rural, it is very unlikely that trans people, given how tiny of a population we make up within the region, would stand up and oppose them. Except what Harvey Road did not account for is that not every trans person is going to stay quiet. Not every multicultural person is going to ignore racism. And so that's unfortunate for them that they had to come across me. I agree with that sentiment. But let me say that I have frequently visited the Harvey Road Tavern and taken my clients there, taken my loved ones there for several dinners, events, enjoyed the pokie machines. So to anyone who might allege that this is personal to the venue or the owners or the staff, it absolutely isn't, and I feel my history accounts for that. To be clear, I also emailed Harvey Road weeks ago expressing my concerns and have not received any replies. In other words, I have tried to resolve my grievance privately before taking these worries public. What I would like you all to know is that I have lived in Gladstone for over 10 years and in Queensland for nearly half of my life. Living here has by no means proven easy. Not as a trans person, not as a Turkish Australian, and also not as an Australian living with a disability. As an intersectional minority, which is when someone is impacted by multiple forms of discrimination or other issues that are related to their identity or background, I have, to say the least, experienced a great deal within my life. Isaac Butterfield has literally stated in multiple videos that trans people lack real struggles. And I just want you all to know that my life has not been one of privilege. It has not been one of benefits gained by my trans identity. It has been suffering, and it has been one survival of crisis after another. So please understand when I say what I am about to say, it isn't with malice, it is with sincere experience over 30 years of my life. Australia is by no means a direct black and white danger to minority groups, but our country poses a different form of danger to the disenfranchised. One where demographically, so many of us are systematically required to be silent and submissive to the whims of the dominant crowd in order to exist in a non-threatening environment. And that isn't always Anglo culture, which is what I want to make abundantly clear once more. I am not against white people. I am white. I love myself. I hate myself, but I love myself. I am not internalizing any form of hatred here. In Victoria, my fear predominantly arose from my Middle Eastern, Muslim and Christian peers, who at times even threatened me with violence, continuously harassed me, even years after one of them, my high school crush, who against my will revealed a very sensitive and vulnerable part of my identity to my entire school. It was traumatic to say the least, and the response I received from so many of my peers in school, I can safely say, was not very kind. In Queensland, it is a different type of danger, a case of a colonial ideology that appears more indirect, yet is also somehow intrinsically a part of the system and culture here, whether it's in politics, business, or sociologically. My point again is that it doesn't matter where you are in Australia or who you're surrounded by. We have problems in all jurisdictions across our land. And people like Isaac, who consistently align with far-right extremism, are not our friends. They're not our allies, and in fact, they are ready to peddle division within our own society, our own home, Australia. Our own home in Australia. I repeat that. Our own home, our own people. They are willing to peddle ideology that divides us, that causes us chaos, as long as they can profit from it. What some of his fans either knowingly or ignorantly deny is that he is a danger to the well-being of Australia and Australians collectively. Unfortunately, though, some propaganda is very cleverly presented, and people like Butterfield prey on and manipulate by mixing empathy into hate speech to create what is known as concern trolling. Then there are the more commonly recognized neo-Nazi personas, such as the one that Isaac recently defended, Tommy Robinson, whose legal name is Stephen Christopher Yaxley Lennon. Robinson is literally listed as an extremist for his very distinct pattern of spreading false information about immigrants and inciting violence against the communities he targets. He is seen as a white supremacist. Isaac Butterfield, who does not align openly with white supremacy, is supporting a man who is listed on an international terrorist monitoring website as an extremist. So put two and two together, the evidence is out there. This is the type of person Isaac regularly defends in his videos. Not good people standing up to religious extremism. Not people trying to genuinely make the world a better place without resorting to violence, disinformation, and discrimination. Instead, Isaac Butterfield chooses to defend people who brainwash and inspire others to unlawfully and immorally harm other people just because they're different. Isaac Butterfield is by proxy a part of that extremist community, even if he is slightly better at veiling his nefarious intentions. He isn't the worst person in Australia, and I'm not trying to paint him as such. Isaac is simply a small but effective cog in helping run a world-shattering agenda much larger than him, orchestrated by people and their businesses whose collective wealth exists on an entire different plane compared to his or most of ours. But they are definitely more than capable of funding, in other words, buying spaces on all major social media platforms and influencers like Butterfield to push their propaganda through. Now, I need to say allegedly because I don't physically have evidence that Isaac is funded by these people, but I'm pretty confident he is. And if you're wondering what type of characters I'm talking about, just to conclude that I'm not pulling this out my bumhole, we have Gina Reinhart, Pauline Hanson. We have the Murdoch Press, which is a billionaire press corporation run by Rupert Murdoch, a former Australian citizen who has news organizations all around the world and runs about 70 to 80% of Australia's media. That is not an exaggeration. You can search it up online. I promise you the evidence is there and it is confirmed by multiple sources. So please let me say this, I mean it, that I love our country and I want the best for our people and all people. That includes me too, which is why I will be standing in front of the Harvey Road Tavern at 5 p.m. on the 11th of July. This is my way of stepping up and saying enough is enough. No to people who voluntarily divide the peace in our nation. No to the businesses that enable them. And no to the individuals and groups who empower dangerous information by giving a flaming gun to the voices fanning the flames of fake news. This ultimately is intended to promote mass hysteria and a lot of evidence. This isn't my opinion. This isn't merely a theory. A lot of evidence points to the current unstable climate within the Western world has a strong link to misinformation and false information being shared on social media platforms. In other words, rage bait, fake news, angertainment. A lot of these terms are reflective of false information. So if you've had enough, I'd love for you to join me at 5 p.m. again on the 11th of July in front of Harvey Road to respectfully, safely, and collectively say no. Thank you so much for watching this video, Gladstone. Thank you so much, Australia. I really hope that I'm not alone, but if I have to be, that's fine. I'm doing what I'm doing because I want to protect the community that we have in Australia, the family that we've developed with one another, because I don't look at Australia and think your race, your sexuality, your gender identity, your belief system makes you any different to me. What I look at is how someone is impacting those around them. And people like Isaac, the alt-right, the extremist ideologies they share, it is tearing our nations apart. Thank you.